I'm back with another video, and then I just wanted to hop right in and then respond to like another one of my own videos in a way. And like sometimes as if you have any background with like writing and you're getting stronger at writing, some of your best writing it actually has to do with like going back over what you've written and cleaning it up and maybe like the less is more in writing, so the more you can break it down and strip it down, but then also tie in like thoughts and ideas and just make it cleaner. You get stronger and stronger at writing. So in a certain way, writing is really kind of contrived in a lot of ways. It's a contrivance. And it's like the way that that it's presented when you're writing something, it comes across as though you're saying it for the first time, and you're saying it that clean and that effective the first time you're saying it to a reader. But really, there had been like a lot of deletions and alterations behind the scenes where it's kind of somewhat contrived in that way. I have some content like demonstrating um, improvisation, but even improvising, whether like musically or like comically in your life, like with bantering with people, a lot of your best maneuvers in maneuvering, they're actually somewhat canned in a way where you've been through familiar passages, or you've tried jokes a little bit, or you've thought about different things before, and then in a situation, as you're being in the moment and spontaneous, and like you're feeling you're feeling your mojo, so to speak, without sounding conceited saying that. You're yet using things that you've been through before, and so it's still kind of canned in a way, even though it's coming across as original, and it is original to yourself and the audience. But it's not completely different from like rehearsal and improvisation are not completely different, and they may yet be part of one another. So I want to say that I'm somewhat responding to some of my own insights and oversights in these videos to clean up the material and make the channel stronger, the body of work stronger, but then also find inspiration and direction off of some of my own statements and motions. If you observe yourself closely and with awareness, you can actually gain insight into yourself by certain things that you say or do, things that come out in your speech that might have a subconscious, there might be subconscious realities or thoughts within you that are still being worked out within your very own behavior and speech. And if you're mindful, you can perceive these and you can actually work with them and to get more effective. So in a recent video, I made statements talking about how significant stealing is. But then I also made reference in another video that when I was a young person, some things may have walked out of stores with me, or out of like teachers, like shops that were meant to be sold to other high school students. So as a child, I had different influences around me, similar in age, and some of those influences were rubbing off on me or inspiring me to do things despite my better judgment. I had family members that were challenged and troubling in their way, but they did teach me right and wrong effectively in what I said and did. So much so that sometimes I acted out just because I felt that square or that prudish, that I wanted to emulate and tag along with like friends of mine that were already doing like egregious things that were dishonest and could have put them on a path to a lot of destruction. And my family, my father being highly educated, as I was growing up, and then he was in the process of rounding off higher degrees as I was a child, and then functioning as an actual academic as I was still in the later parts of childhood. It's not that he taught me right from wrong, but I still yet emulated and even envied some of my friends who were comfortable doing different sketchy stuff with the little bit of leeway that their parents gave them that might have been excessive. So I meant to say that some of it rubbed off on me, and when I was very young, like one time I had been shoplifting when I didn't have to. When I was younger, I was actually stronger and stronger with money when I was younger, so I already had, like, even when I was a child, going into like some of the latter points of elementary or beginning of middle school, I would already have like $20 in my pocket, being a juvenile, and $20 was a lot more back then in the late '90s. But I had a certain instincts about like getting my hands on money when I was little, both in honest ways, but then I started to have a little bit of dishonesty when I was young, and like one time I was shoplifting, and I was trying to put there was that CD by Usher came out, and when that like I think it's like wanna um uh that first hit song that not the first hit song, but one of the great hit songs that Usher came out with like around '97. It's like dun, 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 you make me wanna be the one. That song. So I tried to jack that CD when I actually had enough money to pay for it by putting it in my coat sleeve when I was with another dishonest compatriot egging me on, and then I did it in front of like maybe like 4 or 5 people that were like touring the store with a store associate, and like I dropped the CD onto the floor trying to get it into my sleeve, and they were like they weren't like trying to snitch on me, but like they slowly made their way to the front of the store, and they're like, those little dumbasses are trying to jack some CDs. So like the manager came out, and it was like very serious. Like even we were like young people of color, and the manager meant business with us even though we were yet boys, and he was like, yo, you can pay for this or you can go to juvenile. So I being had one of the graces, like I talk about other videos about like silver lining and graces. Some of our own strong suits and propensities can be our own graces and tickets out of trouble, not to be abused, but when we need them. And if we had been maybe we had been egged on in a way that wasn't completely righteous for our development, there might be that grace and like that lifeline to get out of Dodge or not have to go to Dodge. So I had enough money to pay for it, and then my little bogus compatriot convinced me to give the CD to him, the CD that he had convinced me to steal when I had enough money for it, and then I coughed up the money for it, and then he yet disabused me of it. So all I meant to say is that I did have a relationship with dishonesty coming up from like all the way from like late elementary into the latter periods of high school, and as I was just becoming an adult. And a lot of it was very like petty, and it had to do with like shoplifting or like in maybe being around like substance when I was underage. Of my like but I would do this on my own. Like I would go to like a gas station when I was like in high school, and then I would be like playing around in the cooler of the gas station, and then I would be like playing around like in the bathroom or the library of a local school that wasn't too far from the gas station, like a college, like all by myself, figuring out what substances are, having been dishonest to do so. And what I wanted to say is that I talked about dishonesty and also honesty protecting us, and I'd also talked about like the awesomeness of a higher power in this life, and like a lot of us we pay homage to that awesomeness, and we know what that's about, but sometimes we forget like what actually is an example of that awesomeness in our life, and something to really appreciate how awesomeness is. One of it I put in another video is some of the beautiful people that might grace our path, and we're like, how could something or someone so beautiful be conceived and fashioned and grace our path, and what kind of impetus could inspire that and facilitate such a beautiful person or thing. So that's one example of when we're encountering the awesomeness of this reality. Another one is when we can actually see our likeness or appreciate an identity, our own identity in another person. I would imagine for parents that would be incredible to have a living person bearing their own likeness or the likeness of their lover or their combined likeness as being maybe one of the highest, the essence of beauty as can be experienced by a human being. But then as a part of that, and then as maybe a lesser degree of that, is us as people being either parents or not parents, and recognizing our identity in another person that may or may not look like us, that may or may not be related to us, but just experiencing another person as ourself, as maybe the closest we might have to both a glimpse of ourself, having never been able to actually look at ourselves while we're living, but then also the closest experience of seeing what would be the visage or the essence of what we call higher power, is to recognize our identity in one another. But then another aspect of recognizing the greatness of this reality, and this is a more cold one but no less great, is that when you're doing stuff like dishonesty, like I had alluded to it in these videos when I was a minor, um, I um, so in these settings, it can be argued that I had been influenced to do so in a disingenuous way, whether by people in my life, friends and associates, or also influences in media, no less than music. Some of the same music I was trying to hijack. I wouldn't say that necessarily that Usher album was like that, but there were a lot of other influences that were of maybe adults or people who are influential that are gearing material towards people who are young and impressionable in such a way that they may injure themselves with those influences or just make egregious blunders being exposed to that influence. And that's the name of the game. I'm not trying to start a movement about that or anything, but all I'm saying is that we encounter different influences that may be disingenuous but also inordinate for our station or development. And there's a certain amount of grace that's behind that and lifelines like I talked about. But what I meant to say is that whatsoever influences are about us, when we go so much as to lift a finger dishonestly, I think we will in fact pay for that. So what I meant to say is, like, if I look at like the different dishonest things I did as I was becoming an adult, there were some youth outreach in my where I attended high school of a faith background, such that I was blessed with insights that at a very young age, just barely as an adult, I already had an appreciation for propriety and decency and upright conduct stemming from a faith circle that was unique where I'm from, but also some of the actual saints in the seasoning of those saints sharing their testimonies from many regions in the Midwest, many rough experiences from famous regions of the Midwest, and then sharing that in their testimony and then just their example of conduct that benefited me as a young person, where I was able to come up off of that dishonesty in a very significant and sincere way at a young age, right out the gate, but also at an age where they would start to cost me heavily had I continued making those mistakes. And I think that even the mistakes I made just as a fledgling adult and coming into adulthood and even as part of childhood, I think I may have in fact still yet paid for that. And so I'm saying with these videos that I'm now in my late 30s, very late 30s, close to realizing an actual degree of true independence on most metrics as a man, in a unique way that can be appreciated. But what I meant to say is that if I look at some of the dishonest things I did, going all the way back to trying to steal that Usher CD when I was young, and then now just barely getting to experience a degree of actual independence in my late 30s, having learned many lessons in that span up to the current point, doing many maybe sacrifices and what could be considered noble deeds, which I'm not trying to flex those because the Holy Bible says not to tell the left hand what the good things the right hand did or vice versa, but just to say that I've made very strong and sincere strides, but yet I've also faltered along that path to amount to maybe coming near to experiencing a degree of independence and having a voice in my late 30s, independence and having a voice musically, artistically, as far as content, but then also in terms of employment or self-employment, transportation, living accommodations, education, and so forth like this, opportunities for self-scholarship. But what I meant to say is that the coldest thing about all this is that if I look at my experience, I actually did have to pay for that dishonesty, and it may still have to yet in different ways. But yet I was afforded the opportunity to learn from what I did, and then still one day at some point have a degree of independence and a voice and ability to yet make decisions and potentially enjoy and learn from those decisions, having yet paid for out the wazoo for whatever little dishonesty I did, to where I actually did, in a certain sense, it could be argued that I did do that bit where if I'm playing with dishonesty even as a juvenile or very reaching the cusp of adulthood, those little dishonest things I did that I might think that went unnoticed, they could have amounted to any degree of pain, hardship, or loss for myself, people I love, or other people that I both love and or don't know, just simply by the way I was behaving in a dishonest fashion. There's no limit to what can happen when we're being dishonest, but there's also no limit to what can happen or be atoned for when we're being honest. So I wanted to put that as just a context and reference for that video that I made talking about books that may or may not have walked out of a store with me when I was a minor, and then to make that not sound cool, and just also put a little reflection in context in perspective that yes, in fact, I may have actually in fact paid out the wazoo for that, in the thorough and complete means of what paying and atoning for dishonesty is, but yet still been afforded the grace and opportunity to live an adult life of a full bearing of rights and privilege, as a member of majority. So that right there, whatever graces were around me that both protected me from my own shortcomings, but also had me answer for that in a discreet way. That is some of the coldness of what we could consider as being great. So I just wanted to pay homage to what greatness is and what honesty is, and also say that shall we lift a finger towards dishonesty, whether or not in the midst of influences, those different influences, they may be accounted for and factored into what punishment is meted to us, that punishment being the cycles and ripples of our own action, but yet whatever we do dishonesty, it will be atoned for and accounted for in one way, whether that is blasted broadly or we discreetly get to feel what that's about. We do pay for what we do in this life, and so I just want to say that's also part of the awesomeness, if I'm being honest, of what may facilitate this reality and make this reality viable. Both the beauty of other people, the beauty of recognizing ourselves in other people, but also the beauty and the also awesome consequence of what we do right and wrong as being some of the greatness of what we're referring to when we talk about a higher power or the most high or stuff like that, is that all of that factors into it, and all of that's real, all that's beautiful, but all that's cold too. So just rocking with that and clarifying that statement that I made about not trying to just like let that one ride, like, oh, it's all good and it's cool that I did dishonest stuff even as a minor. So just try to keep this content solid, viable, and honest. Peace.